Hi there, Scott from Wessex Blades. Thanks for joining me again. Now I've been doing my blades like full time for just over 3 years. There's been a few blanks that I've wanted to put some attention to make things slightly more efficient in terms of manufacture, and make them easier to be made with a Kydex sheath. Now one of those was the Wessex, and it was always a pain to do the Kydex around it because it's quite a fat blade and it's swept up in a funny place. And what I've tried to do is get more cohesive design with the handles. And on the Yeoman there was a difference of a 1 pin size, so I've harmonised that as well. So if I start basically at the beginning, if I consider like the Yeoman, that was my old blank. And what I've done is I tried to get the knife handle so it's more akin to what, you know, just woodsman blades would be, more of a hook end of a bird's head at the end. So what I've done is I sort of 90%ed the size of the handle of what my Danelaw is and Thanelaw. So I've got virtually the same blade length, okay, but added a thumb ramp in order to get slightly more blade depth. Now that is very simple. If you didn't want the blade depth of that, okay, in order to, I could lose that and grind lower, or grind around there and end up with a slightly narrower blade. But if I get that cut out as that, it gives me the options of being able to trim it to a Yeoman as it is, which is more of a spear pointish sort of profile. The handle's a lot more, it's got a lot easier stopping at the back. And the other thing was, I had this hole on the previous Yeoman. It was 8, quarter, 8, 13 and 10, which would allow me to do differing blade pins. But if I skeletonise the way that I did the rest of my knives, I could put any form of holes in the centre by having square cutouts there, rationalised to the same thickness to the edge of the handle. And I don't need those holes in there. I just have square cutouts. And by keeping these as 8mm rather than 10, I've just literally streamlined taking the 8 out, putting a 10 in, drilling through both handles. It just takes another stage out, and for myself I think it streamlines the profile of the handle, having all pins the same size. It saves me having to buy 10mm occasionally, which is a bit of a pain in terms of, you know, ordering it from Birmingham. I think it's Keatley's, I think is the name of the place. I tried to be quite clever, so the centre line lines up the tip, so the centre of the hole is in line with the tip. There's a lot better forward prevention of the hand onto the blade there. I'd say at the addition of the thumb ramp as well, it gives the Yeoman, you know, it just moves it forward with my range for the next few years, and see how it goes with that. But that's now the new Yeoman. Right, moving forward, the one I just done for James was a Thanelaw 4, so you can see that is that. Okay, so this is the one that was on the video previous. I've had crazy amounts of interest in. So that's what a Thanelaw 4 is, which I've called a Hunter, because what I wanted to be able to do was give I finally come up with as close to a woody as possible last year. So what I've done is I've tinkered around with the thicknesses, so there's 2 different approaches to having a 4-inch blade. My hands are knackered. I went on grinding all morning. So this now, slightly more trim version, is the nearest thing I do to woodlore, but there's lots of subtle changes compared with what everybody else does. Most important being it's 52 100 rather than 01, and I don't have the pins with the centre pin nearer the back. I've got it sort of equidistant throughout the scales, and that for me allows easy clamping with big G clamps there and there to get an even pressure. It's just so I got somewhere to put the metal of the G clamps. To me it makes sense, rather than that at the back, and I go really religiously to what a wood lore appearance is. I'd much rather do it. You know, a bit of rationale behind the engineering inside, and that would be skeletonized out again square. So if someone wanted a mosaic pins, like 1 or 2, I could put a mosaic pin here, a 5mm there. You know, it just gives me options, and I can put my copper pins straight through by having it skeletonized. I can bullseye copper pins in the centre. So that is the Fainlore 4, but the Woodsman as opposed to the Hunter, which is what James's profile is on the Fainlore 4. So a lot more power in this. You know, it's a really positive handle on it. This is more delicate. You know, as delicate as a 4mm slab of 5200 Oro 1 would be. You know, it's more of a wood carver than that one would be. And then I've redone the Wessex. Now the Wessex has always been a sort of hybrid with a Canadian belt knife and a barong in it. I haven't sold that many, and the problem with the Wessex was it was an absolute swine to get good retention in a Kydex sheath, and it was pretty good doing a leather sheath for it. But I was always there thinking, I really want to change the design of this. So what I've done is I've done a really fat handle, which I can really get to grips with, and I've gone very much like the Cutlass blade that I had further up in my range. The centre pin is ever so slightly dropped. If you have a look, the centre pin is slightly to that side, because this to centre that, the centre of that, if you kept that radius going, it's to the centre of the tip. That happens. So all of my radiuses, I managed to get radiuses all worked out. So that's a radius that's in keeping with that, but between the distance of this radius and that radius, the centre radius keeps in with the centre of the hole pins. So in my mind, I think it flows quite well. I've put a really pronounced thumb ramp on it, so you know the web of your thumb, you know, that fat section there, gives a really good grip. A little bit of a sort of choil effect down here, and for me, for grinding, that should be quite easy to go up against the platen in the belt and do a nice straight section. It's one of the few blades I do with recurve, but I've got a hang of that now, doing it a while. So it would be more when I do the mounting in the jig. It's not necessarily like that. I always move it down, so I've got a slightly forward canted plunge line. So you imagine if the tip was down, then the platen's like that, and if that's the shape that way, by the time you put the blade up that way, the plunge line moves forward. To have a plunge line that's abruptly vertical in relation to the line of the pins and is perpendicular to it, I'd much rather it blended and went along that way in order to impart more strength in this section when you've done stock removal of the bevel. So there's plenty of thinking and thought with it, but this one was quite a crafty move where I just fancied getting it so it was all a nice sweeping swoop, just give a nice pleasing line. So that's one of the few blades I've got that aren't totally straight with the hole pins. This one's just ever so slightly lower to give it's more of a parabola that sweep. If you notice, the radius changes as it goes with those. So that now is going to be the Westbook, and I'm going to do one model. One of my colleagues in the knife building trade has a range of these in different sizes. So if everyone on a Nessmuck got a Dorset Woodland Blades, and he's able to get a small one, a sort of like twinky little thing like that, as that big, and a large one. I don't need to go there because I've got Lacous. So this is going to be a standalone model. I'm not really presuming to do a smaller version of this as a Nessmuck shape. I'm not really looking to do differences in thicknesses. What I want to be able to do is do this as a... I'm going to go initially at a 5.2mm, so it's quite a thick. It'll be a high bevel with the same bevel angle on the rest of them. So I dare say the blade would sort of bevel will come up to about there on it, sweeping up to there. The usual geometry that I do, which is pretty near a Scandi but of a convex micro bevel, and that, in my mind, will be doing rock cuts, starts for bow drill, and that's where you do that in your hearthboard. The handle, pinion, and everything is to point in terms of the parabola centre line as it goes down. So that's going to be coming out soon as. In order to get the steel to do these, I'm looking at it's going to be another 200 quid. So what I want to do is advance orders, and rather than a £50 deposit, 100, and that'll allow me to get the next batch paid for and here. And I'm also on my last 2 square feet of leather, so I've got to go to the tannery in order to get that, and that's 300 in a shot in order to fill the car up and make it a worthwhile trip. So on top of everything else is going to be about 500 quid's worth of materials to get in the next 2 months. So if anybody's interested, if you could leave a message, and then in the next 2 weeks I'll do another video, because often my books are closed, so taking orders will be in a couple of weeks for these few models. So the new Yeoman, the new the Thainlaw Woodsman, and the new Westmuck, because I need a couple of square-ended blanks that are my Danelaws. So it's going to be a fair old batch of 5200 to get. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for sort of joining in with the rationale behind me new elements in the range. And if anybody's interested in Yeoman, the Thainlaw Woodsman, or my one Nessmucky Westmuck model, then please leave a comment, and then keep your eye open for the video in the next couple of weeks, where I'll be asking for £100 deposits. And if I get 4 orders, then that's really helped me out getting the next batch of steel done, and obviously getting this leather from the tannery, which will propel me through the next year. So thanks for joining me again. Scott Voices, please.